NC Pork. Good for the plate, great for the state.
I'm Chris Edwards. So happy to be back with DG here in year 3. Wow, hard to believe it's year 3 already of our quickly growing North Carolina Sports Network. And because of you, our viewers, our listeners, our readers, and subscribers, we have more than tripled in size. Wow, from our first year to our second year. And we hope to keep that trend going here this season as our show is part of what we like to call now Bold North State Football Daily, which, as the name might suggest, provides everyday coverage of the NFL's Carolina Panthers and the 32 college football teams in our state, with a little bit of high school football sprinkled in as well. And just like last year on our weekly show this season, DG and I will mostly look ahead of the upcoming week's college football schedule. We'll also discuss the sport's biggest headlines and take a quick glance back with some of DG's expert analysis on the biggest games and developments from the previous week's schedule. My friend David Glenn, now in his 39th year covering college football, both here in North Carolina and around the Atlantic Coast Conference. I can't quite figure out, DG, how it's year 39 when you're only 42 years old.
Yeah.
Great to see you again, my friend.
Great to see you, Chris. Thank you for those creative words. I don't feel like an old guy. I have a lot of energy in the tank. And I'm excited about this season, including some of these matchups that we're about to explore. Of course, here in North Carolina, but also some of the bigger matchups nationally. It's about as intriguing an opening weekend for the ACC, for our state, and even some of those games on the national calendar over what is basically this extended week one from the time you and I are talking all the way through Monday night and Labor Day night with the debut of that Bill Belichick guy in our backyard.
Well, let's get right into it, DG. There were a few games played in week 0 of the college football season, including a big win by North Carolina Central over in the FCF's ranks. More on that a little bit later, but we'll have a much more robust week 1 schedule here upon us, as you alluded to a moment ago. So we get right into it, this week's biggest contest, both here in North Carolina and around major college football. As you mentioned, 5 consecutive nights of ACC and college football. This segment brought to you by our good friends at Atlantic Tire and Service, where DG and his family take all of their vehicles for routine maintenance, service needs, and world-class selection of new tires. Atlantic Tire and Service, your one-stop tire and auto repair provider with highly trained technicians and a sales and support staff that's second to none. They have grown to seven locations, 2 in Raleigh, 2 in Cary, 1 in Durham, and 1 in Wake Forest. And don't forget about the one out there in the Triad in Greensboro. Learn more at AtlanticTireOnline.com. Now, DG, we're going to take these games in chronological order, and we'll start Thursday night at Carter Finley Stadium, East Carolina, NC State, 7 o'clock kickoff. This is on ACC Network. The Wolfpack opening up as a 12-point favorite at home.
Yeah, Chris, first I want to remind everyone how even this rivalry has been, and I mean for decades at this point. The Pirates and the Wolfpack do not play each other every year, obviously, but we rarely go more than 3 or 4 years between these matchups popping up on the team's non-conference schedules. And most people like it that way, including the fans. Going back to 1981, these teams have played 22 times in the last 44 years. I tried to make the numbers real simple for everybody. Each side has won 11 times over those 22 games. Most recently, the Wolfpack has won 3 of the past 4 matchups during the Dave Doran era, but the Pirates have won 4 of the last 7 in the series, including that antagonistic Military Bowl under Blake Harrell to end last season. And the Pirates have won 9 of the last 16 overall against the Pack, going all the way back to 1987. This season, I do think NC State has an overall talent advantage, and I like the Pack to win this game. Although both teams are capable of riding the arms of the guys who rose into their starting quarterback role midway through last season. Caton Hauser at ECU, C.J. Bailey at NC State. You and I discussed those guys a whole lot in the latter part of last year. It is important to remember, though, that the number 1 star of ECU's bowl victory over the Pack running back Rajay Harris. He's off to the professional ranks. And the Pirates also lost a handful of high-end starters to Power 4 schools in the transfer portal. The biggest personnel advantage in this game, to me, in theory at least, should be the Wolfpack's front seven on defense. That's an area where ECU does not have nearly as much proven talent on its defensive front. NC State, on the other hand, has returning starters Brandon Cleveland and Trevally Price up front, returning starter Sean Brown, and a healthy now Caden Fordham at linebacker. Caden, we talked to at the ACC kickoff event in Charlotte. The pressure is going to be on, though. Both Wolfpack offensive coordinator Kurt Roper, he's new in that role. He has to get the most out of C.J. Bailey. He was the quarterback coach for Bailey last season. And the pressure will be on new defensive coordinator DJ Elliott of NC State to get the most out of that talented Wolfpack defense, which, remember, did lose coordinator Tony Gibson after last season. He's the new head coach at Marshall. And the Pack also lost 4 quality defensive backs to Big Ten and SEC schools in the transfer portal during the offseason. My bottom line in this one is if ECU is going to win, it will have to be about big plays and turnovers. For NC State to win, it will have to start with that Wolfpack defensive front setting a nasty tone, which Dave Doran has promised they're going to be looking for against that Pirates kind of rebuilt and unproven offensive line. And I think that latter situation is the most likely scenario to unfold in front of what'll be a wild and woolly crowd at Carter Finley Stadium on Thursday night.
All right, what about game 2? Appalachian State and Charlotte. This is the Duke's Mayo Kickoff Classic at Bank of America Stadium in Uptown Charlotte, 7 o'clock on Friday on ESPNU. The Mountaineers are a 6-point favorite, but DG, a couple of new head coaches making debuts in this game. For App State, it's Dowell Loggins and Tim Albin for Charlotte.
Yeah, this is a great way, I think, for two of our state's 7 FBS programs to get a rare get-together. This is only their 4th meeting ever, and they're playing it at that huge NFL stadium. They're getting some Friday night national TV exposure on ESPNU, as you mentioned. As most fans might guess, with Charlotte having only one winning season in its relatively brief FBS history, and App State rarely having a losing campaign at any level in my lifetime, of course, last year was one of those exceptions, the Mountaineers have won all 3 previous matchups head-to-head against the 49ers. This game, as you mentioned, matches the first-year App State head coach, Dowell Loggins, who has an extensive NFL background as a quarterbacks coach and an offensive coordinator, and spent the last 4 years at the college level with Arkansas and South Carolina, most recently in the Southeastern Conference. Meanwhile, the first-year Charlotte head coach, Tim Albin, who's coming off 3 straight 10-win seasons as the top guy at Ohio University in the Mid-American Conference, his background is actually as an offensive guy as well. There are higher hopes for App State in the Sun Belt this season than there are for Charlotte in the American Conference, although neither the Mountaineers nor the 49ers were picked to be among the favorites in their respective leagues in the preseason polls, probably in part because they have new head coaches. One huge key in this matchup, and to both teams' seasons really, is which team, if any, can find a productive, reliable quarterback. With the 2-year starter Joey Aguilar at App State, now at Tennessee, starting for the Volunteers, App has an LSU transfer named A.J. Swan, an Iowa State transfer named J.J. Cole, and some other QB candidates in the mix, with Swan, who was actually a part-time starter at Vanderbilt back in 2022 and 23. Swan is expected to get the opening nod for the Mountaineers. We'll see. Charlotte has Duke transfer Grayson Loftus, Carolina transfer Connor Harrell, former Southern Miss starter Zach Wilkie, who was in junior college last year, as QB candidates, and Coach Albin often trotted all 3 of those guys out for media interviews and kept his public comments about that QB derby really close to the vest. Whatever unfolds in those QB competitions, App State is expected to have the slightly more talented depth chart overall, although both the Mountaineers and the 49ers lost 5 or 6 of their best players in the transfer portal in the midst of those coaching changes last offseason. Both teams also, of course, hit the incoming transfer portal really hard, although most of their signees from the Power 4 schools were either backups or redshirts at their previous stops. It probably won't take long in this matchup on Friday night to determine which of these two staffs found more immediate impact players in the portal, because the answer to that question probably is going to be the winner of this ball game as well.
Let's get to game 3 now, DG. This is the one getting some of the national headlines around the ACC. TCU at UNC. This is a Monday night game on ESPN. The Horned Frogs, maybe a surprise, a 3-point favorite on the road at Kenan Stadium, and some new head coach at UNC. I haven't heard about this at all in the offseason.
Yeah, the top storyline in this game obviously is the college debut of the 73-year-old coaching legend Bill Belichick after his roughly 50 years in the National Football League, which did include 8 Super Bowl championships, 6 of those when he was the head coach of the New England Patriots, of course, the other 2 when he was an elite defensive coordinator in the NFL. Maybe the quirkiest fun fact of this entire game is that while most college football analysts, I think including us, would tell everyone how difficult it is to make a huge first-year splash as a head coach, especially if you inherited a team that had a losing record last year, as Bill Belichick did at Carolina. Belichick's head coaching opponent in this game, TCU's Sonny Dykes, did exactly that kind of first-year head coaching splash in 2022, when early in the transfer portal era, he inherited a team that had had a losing record under a good coach, Gary Patterson, and then Sonny Dykes took the Horned Frogs and went 13-2 and played in the national championship game during Dykes' magical first season as the head coach of the Frogs. Yes, that actually happened. TCU in the national title game. I know the Frogs got absolutely squished in that matchup, and it was only 3 years ago. While some Carolina fans are predicting some big things, maybe not quite that big, for this year's Tar Heels, and it is true that UNC has a mostly manageable schedule this season, I personally am skeptical of this group's ability to have a great campaign. The main reason for that skepticism is in year 1 under Belichick, who appears to be recruiting very well for future seasons, is that the Tar Heels just do not have many players who have proven themselves as different makers, at least at the Power 4 level, prior to this season. In fact, in projections for the 2026 NFL Draft, there is only one Carolina football player who's considered a likely draft pick next year. That's the Washington transfer cornerback Thaddeus Dixon, really good player, honorable mention, all Big Ten selection for the Huskies last season. But in other possible red flags, Carolina lost its best player, of course, the running back Omarion Hampton, first-round NFL draft pick, and a few other NFL prospects to the transfer portal. Meanwhile, the Tar Heels quarterback depth chart has one older player, Max Johnson, who's coming off a career-threatening leg injury and is playing with like high-tech rods in his lower body, and one younger player, South Alabama transfer Gio Lopez, who didn't even arrive in Chapel Hill until after spring practice was over, meaning he didn't really put on an official Carolina uniform until about 4 weeks ago. Meanwhile, TCU, while definitely not a juggernaut this year, went 9-4 last season and does have several high-end building blocks back in the fold, including at quarterback, where Josh Hoover is entering his 3rd season as the starter under Sonny Dykes. Hoover threw for almost 4,000 yards last season. That was a TCU all-time record. Also had 27 touchdown passes. The Horned Frogs also have 3 starters on the offensive line back, a big-time receiver and a 5th-year senior named Eric McAllister. Big 5 starters are back on defense, led by a 6th-year senior safety named Bud Clark. I'm not saying Carolina has no chance to win this game, but I am saying that the Tar Heels have less high-end talent than TCU right now, fewer proven commodities returning from last year's team. Obviously, a lot less familiarity with one another, meaning players and coaches. TCU might end up being one of the better opponents that Carolina has to face this season, besides the Clemson Tigers that the Heels will deal with later this year. There are overall a lot of valid reasons that the Horned Frogs are a 3-point favorite over the Tar Heels in this game, even as the road team in that heavy national TV spotlight.
Give me a game that's got at least one in-state team this week that deserves maybe more of a brief mention, and why?
Yeah, quickly, the only other FBS teams we have in the state are both opening against lesser opponents. So Duke hosts Elon, an FCS program, on Thursday night in Durham. Wake Forest hosts Kennesaw State, which only recently converted from FCS to FBS. That's Friday night in Winston-Salem. For different reasons, which we'll explore later in today's show, it will be fun to see quarterback Darian Mensah, a Tulane transfer, play a real game in a Duke uniform for the very first time, and Robbie Ashford, a South Carolina transfer who once started at Auburn, playing a real game in a Wake Forest uniform for the first time. Finally, at the FCS level, Campbell does get a shot at a top 10 opponent in the rankings with a visit to Rhode Island on Friday. And Davidson and North Carolina A&T, you know we love our FCS teams in this state. They both get to introduce new head coaches on Saturday. I will give a little love to NC Central and Western Carolina and even a couple of Division II teams in our state, but that'll be a little bit later in today's program.
It's football season, y'all. Tailgating 101 brought to you by the North Carolina Port Council and Roy Lee. What are the essentials that you need for a great tailgate?
Well, rule number one for any tailgate is don't show up empty-handed, right? You know, if you forget your lawn chair, you can stand around. If you forget your cooler, maybe you can con a drink off somebody else. But you got to bring something to the tailgate. And what I recommend everybody bring
Here it comes.
is bacon. Because bacon makes everything better. And you can use this throughout the day. So you got a breakfast tailgate, we're gonna make biscuits. You got a lunch tailgate, you can throw it in on a cheeseburger. Your team's not doing well on the field, you just have some bacon, and as again, bacon makes everything better. So wonderful opportunity, you can cook it in advance, bring it to the tailgate, throw it on there, it's awesome.
Raising the bacon, raising the bar. The North Carolina Port Council gives you these Tailgate 101 tips all season long here on the North Carolina Sports Network.
Looking for the best food in Wrightsville Beach? Check out King Neptune Restaurant, owned by our friends Jimmy and Keaton Galeese. With fresh seafood, tasty steaks, creative cocktails, and the perfect beachside vibe, it's gotta be on your must-visit list. Whether you're grabbing a weekend lunch or brunch, enjoying dinner and drinks, or catching up with friends at the bar, King Neptune is the place to be. That's King Neptune Restaurant in Wrightsville Beach.
DG, diving right into our ACC and National Week 1 look ahead, brought to you by our good friends at XL Moving and Storage, a family-owned Allied Van Lines partner here in North Carolina with more than 25 years of award-winning experience that can help you with your move to North Carolina, within North Carolina, or away from North Carolina, even internationally, while also assisting with all of your storage needs. Learn more at excelms.com. That's XL Moving and Storage. 3 games, ranked on ranked matchups this week in our National Week 1 schedule, DG. 2 of those contests have an ACC squad as one of the teams that are in that contest, and we'll get to those in just a moment. But we begin with a game that matches 2 of the nation's top 3 teams in the preseason polls. This is on Fox. Saturday at noon, number 1 Texas at number 3 Ohio State. Buckeyes a 1-point favorite in the Horseshoe.
Yeah, Chris, I'll give you both a believe it or not and a did you know right out of the gate with this one.
Let's go.
Believe it or not, Texas and Ohio State, 2 of the biggest brand names in college football history, have played each other prior to this one only 4 times ever, and all 4 of those have come within the past 20 years, with each side winning twice. The easiest matchup to remember, of course, is the Buckeyes' 28-14 victory over the Longhorns this past January in last season's college football playoff semifinals, as Ohio State was on its way to winning the national championship. Since you mentioned the betting line, here's my did you know. Did you know that this game, assuming the line does hold until kickoff, with the Buckeyes favored by 1 at least, it will be the first time in modern college football history that the preseason number 1 team, in this case Texas, will be a Las Vegas-style underdog in its opening game of a season. It makes sense, right? The only time a number 1 preseason team would ever be an underdog in its opener is if it's playing on the road against another highly ranked team. And that's exactly the case here with the Buckeyes number 3 in those preseason rankings and a partisan crowd of more than 102,000 expected in Columbus, Ohio on Saturday afternoon. What is extra crazy about this one is that Ohio State had 14 players drafted by NFL teams off its 2024 national championship squad, and Texas had 12 players selected in the draft back in April. But these programs are so stacked under head coaches Ryan Day and Steve Sarkisian that they're nevertheless still considered among the best teams in the entire country. Among the fun facts in this one is that while both quarterbacks are in their first year as a full-time starter, Arch Manning of Texas, redshirt sophomore, son of Cooper Manning, nephew of Eli and Peyton Manning, grandson of Archie Manning, he is the preseason favorite to win the Heisman Trophy, despite throwing only 95 career passes at the college level prior to this opener. Meanwhile, Julian Sayin of Ohio State is an Alabama transfer who was considered the nation's top high school quarterback during the 2023 football season, but left the Crimson Tide during his only month on campus there in January of 2024. So now Sayin has been at Ohio State for more than a year and a half at this point, but he has only thrown 12 career passes for the Buckeyes. And if he, of course, is taking on the nation's top-ranked team, Texas, in his very first college start. There will be many other big games during the 2025 college football regular season that you and I will enjoy together with our viewers and listeners. But this game at noon on Saturday is one heck of a start.
What about the game at 7:30 on Saturday night? It's a Death Valley battle. Number 9 LSU at number 4 Clemson. The Clemson Tigers, a 4-point favorite at the Frank Howard Rock, the Memorial Stadium there in Clemson, South Carolina.
Yeah, we have to be careful with our Tigers references and our Death Valley references with this one. But as with Texas and Ohio State, both LSU and Clemson are very popular picks to make the college football playoff this year. Also, like Arch Manning of the Longhorns, LSU senior Garrett Nussmeier and Clemson senior Cade Klubnik are both considered Heisman Trophy candidates as high-end quarterbacks and possible first-round NFL draft picks in 2026. The fourth-year LSU coach, Brian Kelly, has taken Cincinnati, Notre Dame, and LSU to many double-digit win totals, many top 25 finishes, even a couple of top 5 finishes nationally with the Bearcats and with the Fighting Irish. But his 29-11 record through 3 seasons with the LSU Tigers has many of that school's fans looking for more. Meanwhile, Clemson coach Dabo Swinney, now in his 17th full season as the head coach of those Tigers, already has 2 national championships, 9 ACC titles, and 3 National Coach of the Year awards during his time representing the Big Orange Tire, Paul. Anything is possible, of course, but there are a lot of reasons I like Clemson in this game, starting with the fact that it is being played in primetime on Saturday night on national TV in a huge window at the Clemson version of Death Valley, a.k.a. Memorial Stadium, as Chris mentioned. That should be a heck of a home field advantage for Clemson. Second, Clemson has 80% of its production back from last season. That is the highest rate of any college football team among the 130 plus in the entire country at the FBS level. The Tigers' high-end NFL talent includes Klubnik at QB, Antonio Williams and Bryant Wesco Jr. at wide receiver, multiple offensive linemen, TJ Parker at defensive end, Peter Woods at defensive tackle, Wade Woodaz and Sammy Brown at linebacker, Avion Terrell at cornerback, among others. This is just the most stacked team in the ACC by far, and I think it's one of the most stacked teams in the entire country as well. LSU, don't get me wrong, is very, very talented too, but those Tigers have a lot more new faces in key roles, and a trip to Clemson is a really bad place to try to get your feet wet with a new team or as a first-time starter in major college football. That's among the many reasons I like the Clemson Tigers over the LSU Tigers.
A win would mean a little bit more for Clemson, too, if you know what I'm saying.
Well done.
Game 3 that we're going to talk about here in this segment, Brian Kelly's former school, Notre Dame. They're on the road. The Fighting Irish, the number 6 team in the preseason poll, at number 10, Miami. A little Sunday night football on ABC, a 7:30 kickoff. The Fighting Irish, a 2-point road favorite at Hard Rock Stadium on Sunday.
Yeah, some of us are old enough to remember the famous Catholics versus convicts game in this rivalry. It was the 1988 regular season when the undefeated Irish, coached by Lou Holtz, beat the previously undefeated Hurricanes, coached by Jimmy Johnson, in a 31-30 nail-biter when both teams were ranked in the national top 5. I think that was like an October game. The rivalry did cool a bit after some of those controversial headlines, and these two programs have played only 4 times over the past 35 years. But now, as Chris said, both teams are in this year's preseason top 10, and both are viewed as legit contenders to make the college football playoff. Notre Dame, under 4th-year head coach Marcus Freeman, is coming off a trip to the national championship game. Miami, under 4th-year head coach Mario Cristobal, is coming off a 10-3 campaign that was by far the best of Cristobal's teams since he left Oregon to take the job at his alma mater a handful of years ago. Although both Notre Dame and Miami will be breaking in new starting quarterbacks after the 2024 starters Riley Leonard and Cam Ward are both off to the NFL. Ward is the number 1 overall pick, remember, to the Tennessee Titans. The Fighting Irish have 3 of the top returning players at their position in all of college football. Junior running back Jeremiah Love, he's a possible first-round NFL pick. Junior linebacker Drake Bowen and sophomore cornerback Leonard Moore. I mean, Marcus Freeman has a heck of a solid foundation at Notre Dame. Miami also has several highly regarded NFL prospects, including junior offensive tackle Francis Mauigoa and junior defensive end Reuben Bain Jr. The quarterback matchup in this one is going to be fascinating because Miami is going to start Georgia transfer Carson Beck, who did lead the Bulldogs to a bunch of big wins over the past 2 seasons, but who also suffered that ugly, serious elbow injury in last year's postseason. And Notre Dame is going to start a highly touted redshirt freshman named C.J. Carr, a prep All-American who actually is a grandson of the legendary Michigan football head coach of yesteryear, Lloyd Carr. Now, both quarterbacks are extremely talented, and there's plenty of talent around them on both teams, but everyone is wondering how Beck, now a 6th-year senior who's almost 24 years old, is going to handle his return from that nasty injury, and how Carr, the redshirt freshman, is going to handle the fact that his first college start is going to come on the road against the top 10 opponent on national TV in a primetime Sunday night game with basically the entire football world watching. Also in play during this game is going to be a different kind of culture clash than we saw in 1988. Notre Dame neither loses nor adds a large number of big-name transfers, kind of like Clemson. The Miami Hurricanes have a long and impressive list of incoming transfers in key roles. Is it hard to microwave a football team that way? We'll see, in part by how the Hurricanes do against a really good Notre Dame team in their opener. Looking for real deal local flavor in Wilmington? Head to the original Saltworks restaurant, run by Bob Hubbard and serving up Southern staples since the 1970s. Hot grits, buttery biscuits, juicy burgers and dogs. It's fast, it's fresh, and it's full of bold North State pride. Open for breakfast and lunch 7 days a week, always starting at 7 a.m. It's the original Saltworks on Oleander Drive in Wilmington.
DG, diving into our coaches and quarterback segment, brought to you again this season by our good friends at Lawson Insurance, who last year celebrated their 50th anniversary of helping DG and many other North Carolina citizens and businesses with their personal and commercial insurance needs. You can reach out to the brothers Ken Miller and Michael Lawson. Like all of us, they're huge sports fans. Give them a call, 919-846-2090, or just search Lawson Insurance online. Coaches and quarterbacks, always a fun topic, DG, but this year in our state especially, I don't really know where we're supposed to start. All 7 FBS level programs in North Carolina. We have 5 new head coaches, and it's possible that all 7 will have a different starting quarterback than they had opening day last year. So with the latter a possibility in mind, let's start this week with the quarterbacks topic, and we'll start in our backyard here in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Which ACC schools do you think should feel the most confident that they have a true difference maker, or maybe an NFL prospect at the most important position on the field? And kind of on the flip side, DG, which ACC schools maybe aren't sure what they've got right now at the quarterback position?
Yeah, Chris, as I answer this one, let me just offer a quick reminder about last season. In 2024, the 5 best teams in the ACC all had high-quality quarterback play. Clemson with Cole Klubnik, runner-up SMU with Kevin Jennings, a 10-win Miami team with that Cam Ward guy, a 10-win Syracuse team with the Ohio State transfer Kyle McCord, and a 9-win Louisville team with another transfer, Tyler Shuck, who played so well for the Cardinals as a 7th-year senior last season that he became a second-round NFL draft pick, and he might end up starting at some point this season in the NFL for the New Orleans Saints. Meanwhile, almost all the ACC teams that finished with losing records last year, NC State, Carolina, Virginia Tech, Virginia, Cal, Stanford, Wake Forest, and Florida State, almost all of them had either mediocre or worse quarterback play for most of the season. That is not mere coincidence. Now, this year, to answer your question, Klubnik is back at Clemson for his senior season, might be a first-round NFL pick in 2026. Kevin Jennings is back at SMU. Haynes King, a 6th-year senior, is back for his 3rd year as the rugged, reliable, great leader starter at Georgia Tech. Those are the 3 most proven returning starters in the ACC. Elsewhere, Georgia transfer Carson Beck is the #1 guy at Miami. Tulane transfer Darian Mensah is the new starter at Duke. I'd say those are the 5 ACC schools that feel best about their starting quarterback right now, although Beck, as mentioned, does need to show that he has bounced back from last year's ugly elbow injury during this fresh start with the Hurricanes. There are other ACC teams that feel good about their quarterbacks right now, but in terms of proven commodities, I'd say it starts with those 5 I just mentioned. At the other end of the spectrum, if you saw Stanford's loss at Hawaii in week 0, you know the Cardinal will not have above or average quarterback play this season, even with former NFL star quarterback Andrew Luck as their general manager, and even with another former star quarterback, Frank Reich, as the Cardinals' interim head coach. Elsewhere, Florida State needs Tommy Castellanos to be much better for the Seminoles than he was before he got demoted as a Boston College player. Cal's going to start a true freshman at quarterback. That's never a good sign in the transfer portal era. Syracuse is going to start Notre Dame transfer Steve Angeli, a redshirt junior who didn't play many meaningful snaps during his 3 years with the Fighting Irish. And Wake Forest is going with a 6th-year senior who's been mostly a backup at his previous 3 schools. So there are plenty of quarterback questions in the ACC right now, just as there are also a handful of quarterback stars in that same league.
Kind of similar question here, DG, as we look at our great state of North Carolina. Which other schools should feel the most confident about their quarterbacks, and which other schools might be facing a season where they're going to get quarterback play that might not be up to par?
Yeah, short answer, Duke should feel best. NC State and ECU should feel second best. UNC and App State are right to be optimistic, but they shouldn't be certain yet of what they have on hand. And to me, it would be surprising if either Charlotte or Wake Forest ends up with above average quarterback play this season. A longer answer. The Blue Devils are so high on Darian Mensah, the dual threat quarterback from Tulane, that they were able to watch last year's starter, Malik Murphy, who led them to 9 victories, remember, transfer to Oregon State without any real indigestion of any kind. Duke is paying Mensah millions of dollars in revenue sharing money, and that coaching staff absolutely expects Mensah to be better than Murphy was last year, in part because Mensah is a better athlete and runner, but also in part because they believe he can be a much more accurate thrower as well. Mensah completed almost 2/3 of his passes last year at Tulane with 22 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions, and he did lead the Green Wave to a 9-4 record and a trip to the American Conference Championship game. NC State and ECU can feel good because unlike last year, they're going into the season with guys who started for them for basically half of last season. Neither the Wolfpack's true sophomore CJ Bailey nor the Pirates' redshirt junior Caton Hauser is likely to play at an all-conference level this season, at least in my opinion, in what is their first full season as a starting college quarterback. But they've both had big games when given time in the pocket, and both guys are very comfortable with their offensive coordinators, Kurt Roper at NC State, John David Baker at ECU. I put the Tar Heels in this middle tier of quarterbacks in part because as we record this, we're not even sure. We're not 100% sure. It could change at any moment whether it's going to be the South Alabama transfer, Gio Lopez, who, again, didn't even go through spring practice for the Tar Heels. He was a late window transfer guy, so didn't even arrive in Chapel Hill until this summer. Or sixth-year senior Max Johnson, who is coming back or trying to from that horrific leg injury that he suffered in Carolina's opener last year at Minnesota. Those guys are both left-handed. Johnson previously was a part-time starter at LSU and at Texas A&M. Lopez did finish in the national top 25 in total offense last season at South Alabama in the Sun Belt Conference. There's also a true freshman quarterback named Bryce Baker, a prep All-American from East Forsyth High School in Kernersville, North Carolina. You would expect Belichick, knowing him, to go with whoever knows the offense best, throws the most accurate ball, and minimizes his mistakes. But that answer obviously could change from week to week during the course of the Carolina season. Finally, I put the Mountaineers on this middle tier as well because their star quarterback from the last 2 years, Joey Aguilar, is now the starting quarterback at Tennessee. Under the new head coach, Dowell Loggins, who did some very impressive things at South Carolina with young quarterback Linares Sellers last season, App State signed LSU transfer A.J. Swan and Iowa State transfer J.J. Cole. Swan was a part-time starter at Vanderbilt in 2022 and 2023. He's a redshirt junior who just got buried on the depth chart at LSU last year. I think it's going to be fun to see if Coach Loggins and his staff can work some magic with Swan or someone else because the Mountaineers have a really good running back in Kanye Roberts, some really good wide receivers in Jaden Barnes and Dalton Stroman and others. So, again, I have questions about Charlotte and Wake Forest, but I feel good to better than good about the QB depth chart picture at the other 5 schools here in our great state. Michael Berard, Managing Director Investments with the Founders Group at Stifel, works with a select group of high net worth individuals and institutions to develop and implement investment plans tailored to their specific objectives and risk tolerances. If you are interested in highly personalized, well-researched guidance and outstanding personal service, you can contact Michael at 984-364-2002. That's 984-364-2002. Stifel Nicholas and Company Incorporated, member SIPC and NYSE.
Now, the focus of this week in college football, as you probably know by now, will be forward-looking as often as possible. We're also going to take a glance back at the previous weekend in college football, too, and sometimes we'll offer some quick mentions to those making impactful headlines on the gridiron, especially in the ACC or across the Old North State. So with that thought in mind, we bring you our weekly fun facts and shout-outs brought to you by our good friends at Jimmy's Bar and King Neptune Restaurant in Wrightsville Beach. Jimmy's has a full bar, nightly drink specials, and live music 365 days a year. And then right next door, King Neptune has become one of the best restaurants in the entire greater Wilmington area. Keep up with Jimmy's on Facebook and learn more about King Neptune Restaurant at neptuneswb.com. All right, DG, bring it on. What do you got for us here in week one of our college football notebook?
Well, Chris, let me hit you with one fun fact and then maybe a handful of statewide shout-outs, starting with the top level of college football and kind of working our way down the ladder a bit. Fun fact, the ACC is the only league in college football that will be involved in every major TV window over this week one extended Labor Day weekend, which, remember, does not have any competition from the National Football League, which does not begin its regular season until Thursday, September 4th. This Friday night, there are only two Power Four matchups on the entire menu, and one of them is Georgia Tech's trip to face Deion Sanders in Colorado, 8 p.m. ESPN. On Saturday, the ACC is involved in a triple header on ABC, some of which we've gotten to, but Syracuse takes on number 24 Tennessee in Atlanta at noon. Florida State hosts number 8 Alabama at 3:30 p.m., and then number 4 Clemson hosts number 9 LSU at 7:30 p.m. By the way, the Orange are a big underdog to the Volunteers. The Seminoles are a big underdog to the Crimson Tide. So we'll see if the ACC has any upsets in it. On Sunday, there are only two games in all of college football, and both involve the ACC. Virginia Tech takes on number 13 South Carolina in Atlanta at 3 p.m. on ESPN, and then number 6 Notre Dame visits number 10 Miami at 7:30 on ABC. Finally, on Labor Day night, we get the only game, college or pro, and it's TCU's trip to UNC in Bill Belichick's much-anticipated debut as the head coach of the Tar Heels. That one televised at 8 o'clock on ESPN. The number one reason by far that the ACC went from being the wealthiest conference in America in the 1990s and the early 2000s to a second-tier league financially behind the SEC and the Big Ten is that the ACC's football product, hasn't had either the overall on-field success and quality depth or the consistently strong TV numbers that those other two leagues have had for a long time now. The ACC won't be able to revisit its below-market TV contracts for many years, but the league does have at least a half dozen intriguing teams this year, even beyond Clemson, and the league's members are scheduling more of these difficult, high-profile matchups against other Power Four opponents. Now the ACC just has to win a bigger chunk of these big games, starting with Clemson and Miami and the other highly ranked teams, but it sure wouldn't hurt the league's football brand if one or more of these underdogs this week, Syracuse, Florida State, Virginia Tech, UNC, can come through with a high-profile upset victory as well. Now for a few well-earned shout-outs from across the bold North State. Shout out to head coach Kerwin Bell and the Western Carolina Catamounts. For most of my 39 years in North Carolina, Western Carolina has been an afterthought during college football season. The Catamounts, who play at the FCS level, have been a member of the Southern Conference since the 1970s, but have never won that league's football championship. They've even been to the FCS playoffs only one time. That was way back in 1983 when they actually played in the national championship game before losing in that one. The head coach now, Kerwin Bell, who led Valdosta State in Georgia to the Division II national championship in 2018, is now in his 5th year leading the Catamounts, and he's just made that program so much more fun to watch and fun to follow. Western finished second in the Southern Conference last year and just missed the FCS playoffs by a hair. They were in last year's FCS top 25 for most of the season, and they're in this year's preseason top 25. One of their star players from 2 years ago, running back Desmond Reed, is now an all ACC player with the Pitt Panthers. Their star quarterback in recent years at Western, Cole Gonzalez, is now the backup quarterback at Pitt, where Kerwin's own son, Cade, is the offensive coordinator under Pat Narduzzi. There are other former Catamounts scattered all over the power conferences. This season, Western again is expected to be one of the better teams in the SoCon. And the Catamounts quarterback, who went 3-1 as a starter last year after Gonzalez got hurt, is a guy named Teron Dickens. Now, Chris, this guy is only about 5'10 or so and 180 pounds at quarterback, but he is a playmaker. Dickens is a redshirt sophomore from Northwestern High School in Miami. Coach Bell was, remember, born and raised in Florida and became a star quarterback back in the day for the Florida Gators. He's gone back to that talent-rich state to get an extraordinary number of players for his program here in Cullowhee, North Carolina. Dickens has spent his entire college career in Coach Bell's system, and he was actually voted recently by the SoCon's head coaches as the league's preseason offensive player of the year. Do not be surprised if Dickens keeps the points flowing and the excitement level high for the Catamounts this season, starting with their home game against Gardner-Webb this Saturday evening. Shout out to head coach Trey Oliver and the NC Central Eagles. Coach Oliver is now in his 7th year as the head coach at NC Central. That's his alma mater. And he has already led the Eagles to the 2022 HBCU National Championship, the program's first ever trip to the FCS playoffs. That was in 2023. And 2 first-place finishes in the MEAC. Last week, in week 0, NC Central got another rare national TV spotlight. The Eagles played Southern University in Atlanta in a primetime Saturday night game broadcast on ABC, and they won 31-14 in what was billed as the MEAC SWAC Challenge. Southern is expected to be one of the best teams in the SWAC this season. The Eagles, one of the favorites in the MEAC, won the game convincingly with 5th-year senior quarterback Walker Harris, who's from Heritage High School here in Wake Forest, North Carolina, and junior defensive end Thomas Johnson leading the way in that one. It was a really impressive performance by the Eagles, who host New Hampshire, a pretty good team from the Coastal Athletic Association. That's at Kelly O'Riddick Stadium in Durham this Saturday at 6 p.m. on ESPN+. Shout out to the Bears. We have 18 colleges and universities in our state that play football at either the Division II or the Division III level. And only one of those 18 teams is in the preseason national rankings this year. Lenore-Rhine is number 17 in the Division II top 25, and the Bears open on the road this Friday against a top 10 opponent, West Florida. So ranked versus ranked right out of the gate at the D2 level. The head coach now at Lenore-Rhine is Doug Sosha, who went 10-3, made the second round of the D2 playoffs, and posted a national top 25 finish last season in his Bears debut. Lenore-Rhine has been a really successful program historically, and the Bears were picked to win the South Atlantic Conference Championship this season in the league's preseason coaches poll. The Bears' previous head coach, Mike Jacobs, is already doing a great job at Mercer in the Southern Conference in the FCS ranks. So it'll be very interesting to see what Coach Sosha can do here in his 2nd year in Hickory without as many of Coach Jacobs' players on hand to do the heavy lifting. Finally, shout out to Winston-Salem State University. The Rams, who also play at the D2 level, will get a rare national TV game this Saturday night when they travel to Montgomery, Alabama to take on Tuskegee in the Red Tails Classic, a game that honors both HBCU football and the famous Tuskegee Airmen who fought for our country in World War II. This game will be televised Saturday at 6 p.m. on ESPNU. Winston-Salem State is led by 7th-year head coach Robert Massey, who played cornerback in the NFL for most of the 1990s as a 2nd-round draft pick after a stellar college career as a player at North Carolina Central University. The Rams are coming off the best season they've ever had under Coach Massey, who actually played his high school ball in Charlotte, North Carolina, back in the early 1980s. Those are my week one fun facts and shout outs as I turn it back over to you, Chris, for some final thoughts on this week's show.
DG, thank you so much, and thank you at home for joining us for our week one episode. A huge thank you to the North Carolina Port Council for being the founding partner of the North Carolina Sports Network. And a quick reminder, DG and his staff are posting daily articles at our fast-growing website, ncsportsnetwork.com, which also has direct links on its homepage to this YouTube channel, which now ranks in the top 2% in the world. Not just North America, guys, the world, with more than 35,000 subscribers. Thank you all so much. ncsportsnetwork.com also has the wide variety of places you can get on-demand audio and podcasts of this show, The David Glenn Show, and all of our other offerings, and updates on year 3 of our Old North State Tailgate and Traveling Sports Circus, which just this week will be stopping in Raleigh on Thursday night for the ECU-NC State game, at Death Valley in the Palmetto State on Saturday night for the LSU Clemson contest, and in Chapel Hill on Monday for the TCU North Carolina matchup. Please check out our social media accounts for more of those details to find out more information about our upcoming tailgate tour stops on our website, ncsportsnetwork.com. That'll do it for our week one episode. For DG, I'm Chris Edwards, right here on the North Carolina Sports Network.
This has been Bold North State Football Daily, an exclusive presentation of the North Carolina Sports Network. Make sure you follow us on social media at the NC Sports Net, and check out our website that is wall-to-wall coverage of North Carolina sports at ncsportsnetwork.com. Our foundational partner is the North Carolina Port Council, raising the bacon, raising the bar. Telling the stories of the bold North State. This is the North Carolina Sports Network.